Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be doing a suspension upgrade on the front end of this truck. Now, 2.5 years ago, which is crazy to think, I did a video of the Bilstein 5160's on the rear of this truck. They are the reservoir shocks, and it made a huge difference. 2.5 years later, they're still running strong. Bilstein actually sent me out the 5112's for the front of this truck. These springs do have to be compressed. It is a dangerous job. If you don't know what you're doing, I'm going to use some spring compressors. Again, they are very dangerous. You can look up videos. They're absolutely horrifying. But I'm going to go ahead and do that in the garage here today. You can do the same, but again, take precautions because it can be dangerous. Now, as I get into this installation, I will link all of the things I used in the description down below, as well as a few common applications for these Bilstein 6112's and the 5160's from my previous video. Feel free to check those links for current pricing and availability, as that is always subject to change. Now, for the spring compressors, I bought 2 different kinds, which I used in tandem as a safety precaution. Basically, I bought one pair, I was looking at them, and then I thought I should have bought the other one, so I bought the other one and just ended up using both. I have seen some videos with guys cranking down on one set to the point where they're bent beyond reason, and I didn't want to find myself in that situation with a loaded spring in the garage, wishing that I had bought another set of compressors. Now, I'm going to walk you through my process of installation. Step 1 was disconnecting the OEM coilover lower and upper mounts. And now step 2 is one that I'm adding in here. And this is definitely a recommendation after going through this project. When you get that OEM coilover assembly out, I do recommend that you disconnect the upper control arm and sway bar to just get an additional bit of suspension travel. I did run into this issue after I got the Bilstein assembly all put together. Trying to get it fitted in, I did end up having to disconnect that upper control arm and sway bar to get that additional travel. So it is better to just do it now and just get it out of the way so you're not having that one frustrating step after you get everything all assembled and ready to go. So step 3 would be compressing the OEM springs until the shock can move freely. Make a note of the alignment on the top mount and lower mounts. Now, I know this might be repetitive, but it is very important. Never point the spring or the assembly at anybody. You're basically looking down the barrel of a loaded gun. I did it on the floor, so if things went wrong in a hurry, it would shoot down the driveway or into the wall behind me, not my face or chest. I also wore a face shield because, well, I have one, and why not? So proceed at your own risk, and you can always take it to a suspension shop if you're uncomfortable or unqualified like me to do this project. But if you are going to shade tree mechanic it, just make sure that you're definitely remaining safe at all times. Now, as you get that spring compressed, the shock will actually start to move freely, and that is when you can do the complete disassembly of the OEM coilover. Now, step 4 is to just slowly undo that spring, just one at a time again. You want to just make sure you're doing that process just as slow as you did when you compressed the spring. Now, step 5 is where you're going to set your spring seat on the Bilstein shock. This is what's going to set your new ride height. I put mine on number 3, which is 1.25 inch lift. And after a week, it settled about at exactly 1.25 inches. So I'm happy with that number 3. To be honest with you, I probably could have went number 4, but I didn't want to get too aggressive with it. Now, step 6 is going to be to compress the Bilstein spring until you can get the top mount components to thread. Basically, you're just trying to get that tight enough so that you can get all of the OEM top mount components because, again, you are reusing all of those from the factory. So step 6, once you get that spring compressed enough and you can get that nut on the top mount components, you can get that tightened down and then release the spring compressors slowly again. Now, I have heard from some people on some forums, there have been reports of the OEM top mounts failing. Not the Bilstein shock, but the OEM top mounts. So proceed with caution. Just as you get this thing tightened down and you start to actually slowly decompress those spring compressors, just keep in mind if there's a failure, it could be at that OEM part. So again, just make sure it's not pointed at anybody, and I would keep innocent bystanders just not around for this portion of the project until you get that spring put back in the truck. And that is step 7, is just to reassemble the front end the same way you took it all apart. So that really is the assembly. It's pretty cut and dry. It can be a little bit time consuming, especially for doing it on your own, but it is doable. I did it myself. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get these things out on the road. So here we are off-road with the Bilstein 6112's in combination with the 5160's that I actually still have on the rear of this truck. And I wanted to get out here and put this out on a Well, basically just an unpaved road. So in my 5160 review, I got some grief like I wasn't out running the Rubicon Trail, but the reason why I wasn't was because I'm trying to do these shock reviews from not a hardcore off-roading point of view, but from somebody like me who I work in construction. My truck is off-road frequently, and I just wanted to get out and kind of show what these things can do for the modest off-roader, which this is what that is. I'm not going out rock crawling. I'm not trying to climb any sort of crazy mountains or anything. This is just a stone road, and it really puts the suspension to work. With the old Ranchos, with the Z71 package in particular, you got just a ton of body roll. I mean, you'd be in here and on even this kind of road, it would just be bouncing all over the place, even up on the highway, which we'll get to that as we get out of here. But for an off-road shock, you want it to absorb that blow and not transfer it all into the cab to the point where you're bouncing your head off the windows. And these 6112s do a phenomenal job of doing that. In combination with the 5160s on the rear, this becomes a very good, modest off-roader. If you're interested in upgrading to these 6112s, my experience has been, in the last week or so of riding around with them, really, really great. So I'm out here right now on this trail. I have not aired down my tires. I'm just going at this with the standard 35 PSI tires all around, because like most people, again, if you're working in construction, doing some light off-roading, and you just need your truck to be a little bit more equipped to do that, this is really the way that you want to go. Now, they are just under 2.5 inch, 2.3 inch diameter shock. So the OEM shocks I measured at 2 inches, so you're getting just a little fatter of a shock. There's a new Bilstein spring that comes with it, and I don't know what the difference in the spring rate is, but I can guarantee you that there is a difference. They also have a digressive piston, but Bilstein has a great name, and I knew that when they sent these shocks out that they were going to work incredibly well, and I'm blown away with them. I just wanted to get out here and get a real good impression of this shock package on a truck like this as I'm rolling here at 30 miles an hour on this road. And you know, I can tell you that the shock is at work right now, because it's definitely quite a bit of washboarding going on. So let's get out here on the highway so I can give you guys kind of my final impressions on this whole shock package, and we'll wrap it out on smoother roads. Now that we've made it out to some more stable pavement, and I'm sure my camera isn't bouncing around nearly as much, which actually it may have been fine because this GoPro 8 stabilization is ridiculous, but out of the corner of my eye I could see it shaking around pretty good. But I wanted to jump back out onto pavement here to talk about these shocks from just a daily driver point of view. Now, if you're familiar with the Z71 package on these trucks, one thing in my opinion is that those Rancho Z71 shocks are very mushy at just basic highway speeds. So when you hit even just bridge abutments, you get that back and forth rocking, and it's a little bit obnoxious. Now, what I did notice with the 6112s on the front is that a lot of that back and forth mushy motion, really just a lot of, I guess, spongy, it felt, suspension feel is gone. It's just very composed, and composed is the best way to describe it. When you hit these little bumps, you can tell, and when the camera is showing the suspension as it's working right now, very isolated at the suspension. You're not getting all that feeling transported up into the cab, which is what you want with a suspension. You want it to work really hard, soak up all those bumps, and not have it, you know, making you seasick up in the cab. The other thing I'll say is the 5160s on the rear. One of the things I noticed with the Rancho shocks, OEM, and for the last 2.5 years or so since these have been on the truck, is that when you hit washboard areas or even bridge abutments with the leaf springs, if you don't have a great shock, the back end of the truck likes to dance around a lot, and it's really an uneasy feeling, I guess you'd say, when you start hitting some questionable pavement spots on the road. And the 5160s get rid of that completely. Night and day difference between those. So As far as the 5160's go and the 6112's as a complete suspension package, I am blown away. It changed the dynamics of this truck completely. It feels like a totally different truck now, and I would recommend them to anyone. Now, I'm not going to get into pricing too much because these videos don't age well when you put pricing in, because pricing is subject to change. So I'm going to go ahead and link in the description down below some Amazon links. You guys can check them out and you know, check the current pricing as of the day that you're watching this video. So thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.